Hello everybody, welcome to the 21st TouchDesigner Roundtable. I'm really happy to see so many old and new faces. Don't be surprised that my voice doesn't come over the system. This is for the stream, for all these thousands of people on the internet which are watching right now, even so it's a bit ridiculous. Anyway, I want to take this opportunity to take this slot and do a bit of advertising for the Node Institute. I hope you forgive me. And if Wieland fades in, I want to advertise the summer season 2023, which we just released a week ago. And this is our course program. But as you know, we always do TouchDesigner and V4 to boost the visual programming community, and we have a TouchDesigner beginners class and a VVV beginners class. Both of them consist of 12 sessions which happen in the evening, so you can do it after studying or working or whatever you do during the daytime. They will be online via Zoom. They will be in English language, and they're meant to get you started with either of those programs. I'm, of course, organizing the TouchDesigner class. I'm very happy that we got Nima Ghazistani as an instructor, who's like a super nice person and an experienced educator, and also a good TouchDesigner freelancer, so I think he's a great person to learn from. As always, we offer our courses with a flexible pricing, so you see that the student price is considerably lower than the company price, so any company that buys a course with us also helps us to support the students and people from countries who don't have the economic power. I've been talking to a few people from, let's say, Sri Lanka. It's kind of shocking what even the student price means for them. So we really appreciate if companies send their employees to us to learn TouchDesigner. And we don't only have the beginner course, but we also have a very nice intermediate program, which consists of 13 modules in 16 weekly sessions. They are taught by different instructors from the community. There's going to be projection mapping by myself. There's going to be an introduction to GLSL by Fanta. Then if you don't like GLSL, there's going to be Paketa 12, who's going to tell you how to do it all in TOPS and fuck GLSL. And then when you don't want that, then you can continue with Josef Pelz, who's going to go into advanced GLSL, looking into how you can make kind of lively systems, behavioral systems with very little code. Very exciting 2-session module. Then I'm going to talk about how can you, what do you have to do to make your TouchDesigner patches work in the context of shows and installations. So how do you change from one crazy patch to the next crazy patch without dropping frames, this kind of stuff. Then there's going to be a session about DMX, ArtNet, and LED mapping. Tommy Etkin, the author of RayTK, is going to talk about ray marching without writing code. We're going to have Moritz Hilscher from Laser Sollinger, who's going to talk about how to control lasers with TouchDesigner. Daniel Molnar, sitting here, he's going to talk about how to use Arduino and comparable microcontrollers with TouchDesigner. A very much asked for topic. Wieland, here hidden behind the streaming desk, is going to talk about web technologies with TouchDesigner, so how to use the web server, for example, to make local control of installations, and how to connect with the wider internet. Then Bileam, who's also sitting here in the first row, is going to talk about, of course, audio reactivity, but advanced audio reactivity. And I'm very happy that we thought about this topic, which is data sonification. So we all know data visualization, but sonification is maybe also a very interesting way to look at data. And finally, last but not least, Daniel again was talking about tracking and depth cameras in TouchDesigner. All of this can be bought as a bundle, or you can buy the individual courses. I think we've got a really good group of educators, even though I'm completely aware that this needs to be a lot more female in the future. So all the ladies or non-male identifying people who want to become instructors, please get in contact. We're waiting for you. And of course, then I have to mention the other exciting thing that you might have noticed that there will be next month the TouchDesigner event Berlin, which will bring a crazy lineup of TouchDesigner professionals to exactly this space. So it's going to be 2 days of lectures, master classes, and so on from a lot of well-known names from the community, and we're going to top that off with, it's 2 days, and on the first day in the evening, we're going to have a round table at the Dome again, in the planetarium, and we're going to show 3 Dome shows by YD Sang, by Monocolor, and by Alex Guevara, and Isabelle Rosé is going to talk about the most exciting projects of the TouchDesigner community of recent years. And this event is going to be free, as always. TouchDesigner Roundtable is always free, and we think this is going to be super exciting. And as you may notice, we're here at the HOLON space, which brings me to thank HOLON. HOLON is a new project by Monomango, the creative interactive powerhouse that sits in the stories above this and produces all kinds of interactive high-end content. It's been founded in 2006 by Lois Keinhuber, Jan Weber, and Oliver Fröhlich, who still run the company. And they've been so nice to support us and to provide the space. And they will also provide the space for the TouchDesigner event. And thank you very much, Lois. And maybe you want to come over and also say a few kind words to our lovely audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. So yeah, very warm welcome also from my side, and in the name of Monomango, the company that I founded quite a long time ago with 2 friends in 2006. Yeah, and we're, as Stefan said, we're also running this space now. This is like our newest project, and the space is dedicated to exhibitions, education, projects, education, events. And it's a prototyping space for us in the showroom, also for own exhibits and also our own product line. A couple of words to Monomango. We started out as, actually back then in 2006, as a classic film production company. This is also where I'm hailing from, so I studied at film school at some point, and then at the very beginning what we did was actually producing TV commercials and all kinds of CGI content back then, and music videos, a lot of music videos. And then maybe around 2010 somehow we tapped into spatial media, let's say. Yeah, we were approached to equip, for example, TV shows, TV stages with content, back then still time-based content. And of course then we reached a point where we said we also want to influence the spaces somehow, how they gonna work and can be equipped with the media. So then we had like architects and product designers then also in the team to also design the stages and the spaces. And then of course at some point you want that the spaces and the media reacts to the audience, and that brings you to interactive applications and software. And that was the latest step in our development basically. And since then we call ourselves a experience design studio. But let's say we are an agency working for major brands, mostly in tech and automotive, and in lifestyle projects and product releases of those brands. And yeah, this is just a couple of snippets of shows and exhibitions that we did, and also some motion content and applications. Yeah, then all of a sudden there was COVID, and as you see, like most of our projects are connected to audiences, and that was not possible anymore. And that brought us to virtual experiences, actually a bit before everybody was somehow shouting metaverse, so I think it was not yet existing so extremely that we're at that point somehow. But you see Zeiss, for example, which is one of our bigger clients, and they approach us, so how can we still present our product portfolio when we cannot actually build booths anymore? And that brought us into virtual experiences and 3D experiences in the browser. And of course it's like an OpenGL application here, but that opened a whole new door and world for us somehow. Yeah. And the next step was then to really evolve into more high-endish Unreal applications. And since all of our like exhibits and projects, or a lot of them are connected to tactile interfaces, we then decided to try to connect those two worlds basically, and to have like in the real world tactile interfaces and applications to navigate in virtual spheres. And during COVID, we had enough time to actually develop some kind of like serial product line, which is called Immersive Instruments, and we're right about to launch this. And we have a product that we also want to present today, which will be presented by David, who's the product owner of this project, basically. And yeah, we're super excited to be able to show this at this edition of the Roundtable. So have fun.
Hi guys, so I'm David. I'm David. I'm, as Lois said, the product owner for the new product line, but I've been using TouchDesigner as an artist and a programmer for almost 10 years now at this point. I was first introduced to that sweet TouchDesigner drug in Weimar by Stefan Kraus, aka MX10, at university. And after doing a class with him where I did visuals for a classical orchestra, I worked for Stefan for I think 5 or 6 years, very intensively. And on the side still did my own projects. Also I have a background in lighting and stage lighting. This is like a bigger 500 square meter theater piece that I did 5 years ago in Jena in Tunisia. Exactly, and did visuals a bit everywhere around Germany. But I started at Monomango 3 years ago, literally 5 weeks before the pandemic began. So the horizon changed quite a lot towards what I would start doing at that company. As Lois mentioned, we first focused on virtual product launches because all of our clients still wanted to do that. And I'm still holding back on the product line, so I'm just gonna tell you a bit about like our latest projects. So we're finally able to do again bigger brand experiences in person. We just did this in Cologne for size at the IDS, which is the largest medicine or dental technic show in Europe. And we basically had those custom-made LED stripes and an infinity mirror with an LED wall or LED panels built into it, and different web apps. What you see here, does the mouse not work? No. What you see here basically is a series of touchscreens that were mounted around the installation, all running off of TouchDesigner, rendering different web apps that the client wanted to promote here, but in a more playful way than you would normally have at a trade show. So that's like, once again, like one of our biggest strong suits, being able to adapt, I'd say, more normal content into like a more fun way. So you still have like this holistic concept, you have this language design that goes for everything, and you have sensors, and as soon as you approach the touchscreens, you see the web app, so that you don't see dental operation pictures from 20 meters distance. So yeah, this is what we just did 2 weeks ago, and right now we finished that installation literally this morning at Nike, the Nike main shop here in Berlin at Kudamm. We just launched an installation with 2 interactive treadmills that is running until Sunday for the half marathon Berlin. So if you want to try interactive treadmills with our software, just go to Kudamm. It runs until Sunday. But now I'm coming to the main part. So as Lois mentioned, we had this shift during the pandemic where we had to find new solutions and develop a new product line, and I'm very happy to actually premiere to the public this whole product line tonight. So we're just going to go onto our website. So we developed a huge touchscreen table that enables you, for now, to visualize architecture in real time. It's comprised of the 75-inch touchscreen and a special sensor array to the side that we will go back to later. So basically, we started by developing a whole framework in TouchDesigner for multi-touch, because this touch table can do 100 touch points at a time. So we basically started rethinking how to approach touchscreen interaction using TouchDesigner. And then a client of us approached us because they wanted to show architecture in real time instead that wasn't yet existing, so bigger real estate development projects. So we developed a software called Architect Studio, where you have this, as we call it, the navigator. So on the table that runs TouchDesigner, you see a blueprint of an apartment where you can place freely this round object that has this very clear, these two dots that point the direction towards you look at. And this in turn controls a scene in Unreal Engine that is rendered in real time at a resolution of 4K. But it's not all, because of course we can have a character just walking around. We have different kind of image optimization, but then it starts getting interesting because we also have daylight simulations, which for clients is always a very interesting thing, of a potential bias for our clients to be able to simulate in real time the position of the sun. And also you can pre-visualize fit-out variants, of course. You can see the flat with and without furniture. That's all part of the thing. And to control all of this, we have an array of different products. We have the large commune table that I will do a demo of in a few minutes. That's behind the curtain. We developed a mobile solution for trade shows that still is able to display the whole TouchDesigner-based UI, all the controls around it, and render an Unreal scene in 4K in real time. And we have this product we call Detector that helps you enhance the whole experience around customizing architecture, or like customizing fit-outs, and of course our navigator. But let's go to the tactilized solution that uses the detector. So basically we have material samples, and the idea is we're working also right now with developing a solution for an automotive brand. The idea is you can change in real time the material sample, and fit out, in this case of the apartment, changes instantly. But there's another software, because right now we have the Architect Studio that was like purpose developed for a client, tactilized, and around that we have an app that enables you running TouchDesigner to not only to basically have a, how do you say in English, to have a takeaway from your visualization session. So we can do screenshots in 8K of the scenes, and the client can then upload them on our custom platform. This platform also runs in TouchDesigner. We have the whole connection to the web. This is all thanks to Wieland here, who's very fluent with all the web server things. People who've worked with Wieland here, I know I've seen a few, know that that's his gig. And basically we have a whole smart user management system, and it all works perfectly in TouchDesigner and is connected in real time to the platform. And it's basically, as soon as the file is uploaded, the client already has it. You don't have to wait for like a Google Cloud or whatever to have processed the file to have a preview, but you can directly instantly see it. And so that's the product for now. And we're working towards making more. We're working with different call providers to be able to have, because we have this big conference table now, and we want to have a more interactive way of meeting and using that table. I cannot tell too much in detail about it, but some of you might pick up a few hints about what's feasible with all of this. And now I'm gonna tell you a few things about how we did it in TouchDesigner. We can't, of course, this being a serial product, we cannot show too much, but we're heavily using the Touch engine, and we have a whole substructure of different apps. So what we tell the end user is an app is actually running as a separate Touch engine component. And you have a whole hierarchy that's heavily relying on a custom multi-touch framework, as I mentioned. And basically, what I can tell you from working on this product for almost 2 years, and also with a lot of different Unreal artists and Unreal developers, so we have a team of, these days, almost 15 people working on this, depending, of course, on how close the next release is. If you use Touch, try to put everything in Toxes to manage it, because there is somebody who has to merge the work from everyone in Git. And if everything is in the TOE file, nobody knows what's been done. So that's been like a really big challenge for us, and this is where I can mention one of the tools we've been relying on a lot. Who here knows the OLib from Wieland? So there's a few. So the OLib from Wieland is a free library of different tools for TouchDesigner that I can only recommend to everyone. And I thought I would just mention this one tool that we've been using to manage Toxes that makes your life way, way easier, called the Private Investigator, and it's basically a component. It's a container where you can drop into it basically every component you want in that as a Tox. And you can see, I don't know if you can expand on this image. Does it work? Yeah. Okay. So basically, the great thing about this is you know how many builds there is behind that, or a different version. You know who saved it. Now, in the newest version, you also know when it was last saved, which helps a lot, because then you can better connect it to all your Git commits. And yeah, so this is one tool I can only recommend to everyone that made our life a lot easier while developing a big system. I'd say like a third of the team is working on the TouchDesigner side of things, and 2/3 of the team are working on the Unreal side of things. So this is one of the tools I can recommend to everyone. Just use the Private Investigator. Will change your life forever if you're using Git. And another small one that I thought has an honorable mention, the Op Store. So I don't know who here uses the shortcut system in Touch storage. Yes, so this also makes your life way easier, because you can basically, you have an overview at a central place of all the components you've saved and all the shortcuts, so you don't get lost into having two ops having the same global op shortcut and messing everything up. So yeah, that's basically more or less it on what I can tell you about what we did, but I can now show you. So before we go to the demo, I don't know if there's maybe some questions.
Basically, just want to say one thing about the OLib. I'm the programmer of the OLib and one of the main contributors, but there are also a lot of other people contributing, and you're also invited. So it's not just my stuff you see there, but for example, Dan also just released, for example, if you go to the Home tab, David, maybe, yes. You can already see the complex math tool set, for example, already. You can find this on the OLib. So I just want to make this straight. It's not just my stuff over there. If someone has questions, please use this microphone, by the way. maybe Stefan can come and pick it up.
Questions, but I can bring the microphone.
So, I think we'll start with the demo.
I think you should maybe still have the microphone, no?
I have
So you have the
lavalier. So here is our table, our prototype table. We have one, what I failed to mention is where we have one that's at a client running every day of the week. They're using it in their architecture visualization sales processes, and we're only getting good feedback from it, and we hope to develop it to more use cases, as I mentioned.
We will be back in 30 minutes.
Yes, you can all come here, and I'll
See
give
you
a short
later.
demo of the product.
is Marta Pang. I'm really happy that she's presenting. She's a regular at the TouchDesigner Roundtables, and it took a bit of convincing, but today she's going to finally tell us what she's been working on. She's coming from Hong Kong, but based in Berlin now, where she's studying a master degree at the Film University Babelsberg. And she just 1 year ago, 2 years ago, started to do dailies as an exercise to head a dive into the world of TouchDesigner. And when the microphone is fixed, which it is now, then I would give the word to Marta. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. So let's start now. Hi. Give me a second to fix this. So hi, great to see you all here. So are we going to see anything from the second screen? Yeah. Yeah, hi. So great to see you all here. So I try to greet everyone in as many languages as I can. So, but if it's faults, it's ChatGPT, so it's not me. Thanks. So before we dive into things, I just wanted to share a little bit of myself, although I think Stefan just talked pretty much everything. So I'm Marta, and so I'm from Hong Kong. I'm actually from the background of photography and videography, so I've been working as a photographer for more than 6 years, and mainly work on commercials and films. And I was never close to any kind of visual programming or codings or any kind of this stuff. And I think maybe the closest would be getting LED light blinks through Arduino and also copy the code, so it's not very practical. And so I have been doing like everyday challenge more than 400 days. And so it's basically because I discovered like TouchDesigner, and I've been really interested in doing this kind of stuff. And in order to speed up the learning path, so I just set myself a challenge to do it every day. And because of this, it also got me into a master degrees in creative technologies without any related background. So I think maybe this is something some people might be interested in. And so to give you a little bit impressions of how 400 days look like. So yeah, it's like a very funny journey. But I would say I'm still relative new, or still kind of like a baby to generative and interactive stuff, especially when it comes to coding or anything very technical. But so I have to disappoint you today because you're not going to see any of my project file today. And instead, I'm going to share a little bit of my experience of learning TouchDesigner without related background, and some tips for everyday challenge if you ever wanted to start with something similar, and also what Ren wants and what I wish I knew when I started. So it would be more like less focused on like technical side, rather more like a beginner friendly kind of resources. So this is just like a quick look of my evolutions. So starting from day 1 to 30, and to 60, to 90. If it's too fast, just stop me. And 120 days, and then we skip all these 200 days, jumping to 270 to 300, and 330, and 360, and 390, and this is the latest. So it's until now, today is the day is 429. And so the learning journeys, as a person who doesn't know anything, starts with tutorial, tutorial, and tutorial. So It's so weird because some of them are actually here, but I don't get paid, of course, because this. And so, of course, like Williams is very classic, like a lot of like beginners tutorial, very easy to follow, and Paqueta, very mathematic background, so really hard to follow for me. And no one's image is like short, on point, very fast, a lot of pause. You have to watch it if you want to. And Matthew Reagan's like a lot of in-depth, like long tutorial, but it's really helpful as a beginner to get kind of like a whole image of, or like a whole things of TouchDesigner, and also Polyhope. He doesn't have a lot of tutorial, but everyone is also very good. And Function Store, very technical based, a lot of good tools. I like Critical. I really love his beginner course because it's just like 2 hours straight and a lot of practice you can learn from, and it's also very beginner friendly and interactive and immersive HQ. So that's probably, of course there's many others, but this is just something that I watch as a beginner. So my everyday challenge is actually inspired by Holly Pops, who has been doing this for I think more than almost 2,000 days. So I also very highly recommend it, checking it out if you're interested in doing this. And he shares a lot of like useful tips, and I'm also going to share some of them. So first will be the tricks of how to do like everyday challenge, because the first thing is to set your own goals and rules, because it's very important. You have to do something like, you have to set something in between realistic and also jumping out of your comfort zones. And the one and only goals that I have for this challenge is to keep it going. So because of this, you might see a little bit of inconsistency on my visual challenge, but I don't really mind. So this is because I know my goals are just like to keep it going. And also to post every day doesn't mean to create it every day. This is like also the rules I learned from Polyhope. So I try to do it as best as I can, or as frequent as I can, but you can see from my project file, I don't also do it every day, because life is also pretty hard. And don't make it even harder with the challenge. But in this case, having backups for days that you don't want to do is very important. And for me, I'm very paranoid, so I save up around a month for backups. So if you go to my Google Drive, you see a lot of unpublished visuals. And also to learn a little bit time savings techniques. One of the most useful things that I learned is, it's also very beginner level, as this Command N to get note. I'm so thankful that I found this, because every time you click and you just need to edit, I just try to be lazy. Yeah, and another quick tips to do is to start with old projects, old networks, and combine with new techniques that you have learned. So basically what you can see here, they are all from the same network. So it's flickering. Like in general, you can see like the diversity of all the visual, but they are actually also from the same network. And I just used different techniques I learned from the other day, and I think, oh, maybe it's interesting to put it into an old network. So you can see how lazy I am. I just basically create everything in one network. And so enough for everyday challenge. Now it comes to the most fun part, is what went wrong. So my biggest problem and mistake is not keeping the file names organized. I'm not so sure if this is just my problem or everyone's problems. Do you think it's super difficult to keep it organized? Yeah, so, yeah, and I can show you later like how disaster my project file is. But this also leads to the chaos when I need to find specific file when someone asks, oh, can you actually export this into another resolutions, and then you just need to go through everything to find the specific one. Yeah, I think my friend Ram warned me, just say, always think of future, but that was my response. And I was like, okay, but now I learned, so I also hope you guys don't really step into the same mistake I make. So let's take a look of my disaster. So this is my project file. It's pretty normal, but when you go into backup, you have all the number, you have a copy tool, I don't know why, another copy tool, and when you go down, you have different version of B, C, D, D, E, and also Marta 13. When you go back, you have backup, inside another backup. It's a really nightmare to me. It's a little bit embarrassing, but I hope you guys don't really make the same mistake, but I have a good solution later. Yeah, so basically, this is one of the mistakes. And then the second mistake, but what could be better is like, I had a problem with this fragmented learning. So basically, I found a lot of online resources to start with because I mainly do like self-taught, and there's tons of online resources. At some point, I just have feeling that I'm just learning bits and bobs, a little here, a little there. And as you may see also from my work, it's pretty inconsistency. And you can see sometimes the visual is a little bit random. So it's also because of like lack of like structures. And for me, I really recommend this video. I just find it on like TouchDesigner YouTube channel because it's 4 hours long, I know, but it really guides you through everything that you need to know at once as a beginner. So I really recommend to do this instead of like jumping here and there to learn little tiny things. But of course, it's also easier to get started if you just watch 15 minutes tutorial to understand the whole thing. But at some point, I really suggest you guys to go back to this kind of long video to go for everything at once. It really helped me. So yeah, so this is something that went wrong to me. And so until now, I also make tons of mistakes, and I still do. And there are things that I wish I knew when I started. So I hope you guys know now. So I'm going to give you something at least maybe to know. So you guys already saw the disaster of my naming system. And so this Python expression for output file naming is from like function store. Thank you for saving my life. Because this is basically the Python expression. So basically when you save the project name, the output file name updates with the project name. This is super helpful to me, and also for me as a beginner, it's really hard to find specific Python expression for this. So right now I have like much more organized naming. So the second thing is the OP snippets in TouchDesigner, because there's a lot of like live example. You can know how to use each operation, also get inspired with. Sometimes I just copy the whole thing and put it in and to see how it works. So basically you can find it on the help menu. So basically it has all the operator and with examples how you can use it. This is very helpful to me. So the third thing is optimizing workflow. I used to do everything manual, and I still do sometimes, but I try to save as many components as I can when I know that I'm going to use it more than one time. And it's really like a good practice. And also explore a little bit more like tools in the community, because TouchDesigner people are very generous to share everything online. And this is something that I really like. So the color picker, probably a lot of people know. And I really don't get paid from function store. So I'm sorry, but this is really good because I hate typing app stores. Second, because I always spelled it wrong, so I always had to go back and forth. But this is just like hashtag AT, and it just give you the expression. So I'll just try to be as lazy as I can. Yeah, so the fourth thing is export high quality video for social media, because I realized a long time ago, but I just didn't find a way to solve it, so I just let it. Because like when you upload video to social media, it just kind of lower down your quality. And yeah, thank you, William. So this is also his tricks. Giving, like this is something that he mentioned, like using shutters and coda. It's like a free software. So right now my approach is to export like a movie file from TouchDesigner and then use this to convert to MP4 and upload it. And compared to my old post, I really see the big improvement on quality. So this is also something that I would like to share. So this is pretty much it, but last but not least, the final thing is sharing is caring. So I learned from this community is to always ask, because sometimes I just get stuck into one tiny little technical thing that, and I just couldn't let it go and try it for days. But actually, if you ask people from in the community or even on social media, they're really helpful to ask, to answer. So just don't be afraid to ask, and also feel free to say hi to me. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
should
Martha,
pay
for
me.
this amazing presentation. And as Martha has said, always ask. So if you have any questions to Martha, then this is the microphone to do it.
Or something related to photography, I'm also happy to answer.
Yeah, if not, and this is too formal for you, we can go to the good old personal chat situation again. Thank you very much for coming. I thought it was a great talk. I hope this is also an encouragement for everyone to, just do a presentation and not be shy about that you just started out doing it, because I thought it was like great, lots of good info. I'm going to look into this shutter encoder, didn't know about it. There's always something to learn. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. I hope you had fun networking and socializing and do all those non-nerdy things. The next presenter, following a tradition, is a remote. He's calling in from Los Angeles. His name is Pete Thornberry, also known as Pete on Instagram. He's a very experienced lighting designer, has worked on everything in events. He's using TouchDesigner mainly for LED pixel mapping. And together with some friends, he's running the Lighthouse space in LA, which is an experimental studio. They also organize TouchDesigner courses, and in one session of the intermediate courses, the one with TECT, we're going to do like a hybrid situation where we have an online Zoom course, but people will participate on location in LA and in Berlin, and hopefully it's going to be interesting somehow to be between these time zones. But now I'm very happy to present you Pete Thornberry, Pexel.net. And Pete, glad that you coming.
Hello. Can everybody hear me? I'm just going to assume that you can hear me.
We can hear you, but we cannot yet see you.
Oh.
Issues. Ah, there you are, there you are.
All right. Hello, my name's Pete Thornberry. I go by Pete on the various socials. The number of E's in the middle vary based on the social media. I think for Instagram it's 3 E's, but you can get all those off of the website. Pexel.net is my website, and also, like you mentioned, I help run the Lighthouse, which is a studio space in Los Angeles at the Brewery Arts Complex, which is where I'm at right now. And despite the super bright windows in the background, it's actually kind of gloomy and rainy in Los Angeles today. But anyways, today I'm going to be talking about basically how I use TouchDesigner in relation to my industry. I've been doing lighting design for about 20 years, and about 8 years ago, I kind of discovered TouchDesigner when I was looking around for some way to do LED pixel mapping a little bit more easily than the lighting consoles that you do. They definitely have a very kind of linear way of doing effects in a lighting console, and there's a few kind of pixel mapping systems out there, but they're pretty rudimentary, especially compared to the kind of generative content you can do in TouchDesigner. So when I discovered TouchDesigner, it was very eye-opening, because also I'm very bad at coding. I definitely have tried many times to learn how to write various levels of code, and the most I can get away with is basically the single lines of Python that I occasionally put into parameters in TouchDesigner. Anytime I have to write more than that, it certainly gives me a big headache. But most of my biggest projects have never had more than a couple lines of Python code, and certainly never any GLSL stuff. But I've definitely been using a lot of other people's GLSL kind of things, especially, and also Python things. Like I'm a big fan of the pip component that comes from the TouchDesigner thing that Whelan makes that I'm completely blanking out on. Alpha Moonbase, or was it AMB? Yeah, you guys know what it is. Everybody uses it. I'm a big fan of that. I'm also a big fan of the RayTK system that Tommy Etkin has been building for a while. That's kind of the latest thing I've been messing with, doing volumetric pixel mapping. I've been getting asked about it for years, and it's the first like really good solution for it. And we've actually been, Tommy and I have both been working on some stuff with LED Pulse, which is a company that makes some big fancy volumetric LED arrays. But that's a whole other workshop. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I assume it should pop up. Anyways, yeah, I'm just going to assume it's up there. So yeah, this is, some of these images are just kind of my traditional lighting design work. I've been doing lighting design for 20 years. I went to school to get a theater degree at the behest of my parents. That was after trying to get into computer programming and taking an intro to C++ class and experiencing my brain trying to exit my skull through whatever means necessary. So that was kind of the first clue that I was not a computer programmer. The lighting industry has kind of been like lighting programming basically with the Grand MA 2 has been the majority of my work over the years. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I discovered addressable LEDs and TouchDesigner around the same time. And for the past 5 years, that's kind of all I've been doing. It's kind of gone back and forth between personal art projects and large scale installations and shows. A lot of the work has been for corporate events, recently a lot of esports, a little bit of TV show stuff, but it all kind of really started, I think 2017, I want to say. The first install was was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and it was the first time kind of doing a big TouchDesigner project and integrating the lighting console. And it all started with Previs, which a lot of my projects end up using. So this is the previs that I made of, there's an entryway tunnel or an exit tunnel actually, in the museum where there's all these LED strips, and the exit tunnel kind of spirals upwards. And so the concept was that you walk through the LED strips and you would have animations kind of follow you. And this was my very first kind of building a previs inside of TouchDesigner. And it is, I believe it's actually, at some point it started listening to DMX addresses, because these LEDs were not video product. They were addressable LEDs. And it was also one of the first usage of addressable LEDs on a big install project that I had witnessed. And I witnessed the contractors basically destroy so much of the LED tape that they had to cut the number of these archways in half because they ran out of LED tape. But this is kind of the final animation that we had running. It's a looping animation that was long enough for people to walk out of the building after the experience, and it kind of curves upward, and this kind of same animation continues all the way up. But because we lost so many LED strips, this is the most interesting part of the tunnel, and the rest of it, it's like much more sparse. This was from a working with people in the lighting industry point of view, this was a very tough project because it was very hard to, this was when I've worked with this designer a lot since, but we had to spend a lot of time figuring out how to kind of talk to each other in the lighting design language that we're all used to from theater and regular lighting programming, and translate that to what you can and cannot do in TouchDesigner. And one of the things I learned very quickly is that some of the things that are super easy to do in TouchDesigner seem impossible, and so the designers never ask for it. And then once they realize that things can be super easy, even though they seem impossible, they start asking for things that are actually impossible, thinking that they're super easy. So it's this constant back and forth of people asking for really crazy things, and sometimes you can do it, and then they're super jazzed about it, and then they ask for something else that seemingly would be just as easy, and it isn't. This one actually, the kind of some of the effects that you're seeing here, they kind of like that sparkle right there is something that they kind of wanted to be volumetric, and this was way before RayTK or any concept of even doing volumetric stuff. And I couldn't really figure out why they wanted it to be volumetric, and they kept saying, well, why can't you just like pass a thing through these 3D arches? You already have them in 3D in the previs. And most of the volumetric effects I ended up kind of faking and then just saying, look, it's volumetric. And they believed me, and the project moved on. The actual project, the actual experience is this main room, which has a bunch of LED strips in the ceiling and along the walls, and there's moving lights everywhere, and there's these moving projection screens which were being tracked. That was all done on Hypnotizer, but the LED strips were all controlled with TouchDesigner, and that was in turn controlled by a lighting console. And we got it to a point where we could actually control also the moving lights with the with TouchDesigner. So it would match up the mapping of the moving lights with the mapping of the LED strips, and that's I think I have a video of it somewhere, but I don't know. I guess it's not in this video, but basically, where was it? Yeah. So this video is showing the interface that I designed. It was a very poorly designed interface, but it was quick and dirty. The thing in the upper left corner of the screen is what is actually being sent out to the LED strips. There's a lot of mapping that you have to do to kind of like translate what the content you're creating into weird shapes and lines that the LED processor or the DMX out chop is expecting. It was definitely a lot of remap tops and learning how to make UV maps with red and green. So let's see. So yeah, you can see the speaker, the fake speakers, the lines between the speakers, and the moving lights in the back that are all kind of moving around crazy are all getting basically the same pattern. And so the intensity in this case is being driven, intensity in the color is being driven by TouchDesigner for both the LED strips between the speakers, which are video product, the speakers themselves, which are I believe addressable LEDs or maybe just regular LEDs, and then the moving lights, which are Ayrton magic beams or magic dots that are being driven through the Grand MA. Pan and tilt is being driven by the Grand MA, and then the color and intensity in this instance is being driven by TouchDesigner. But we set it up in a way that the programmer could decide which, like whether TouchDesigner was what was controlling the color and intensity, or whether the Grand MA was, or whether it was a mix of the two. And you can see him, that's Matt Stovall there, who's the programmer I've worked with the most. He's messing with the color on the Grand MA to fade from TouchDesigner control color over to the GrandMA controlled color, and all the ceiling stuff is kind of mapped spatially as if the whole stage was one giant LED screen. It's not the most obvious, but yeah, so. All right. So in building this system that is run by TouchDesigner, it's TouchDesigner running the lighting console. Actually, I've got a diagram for this. So the original system was just GrandMA 2, DMX coming out of the GrandMA 2, controlling TouchDesigner, and I had to figure out how to make a fixture profile in GrandMA that had all the attributes that we wanted to control, and those all had to be or kind of like abstracted based on what a GrandMA programmer might be used to. And then TouchDesigner was then taking that, it was 1 to 2 DMX universes coming in from GrandMA to TouchDesigner, and TouchDesigner would take those 1 to 2 DMX universes and use it to create generative content that would then get mapped to either LED pixel tape, and that would be DMX or video in some cases, or both, coming directly out of TouchDesigner and going to all the LEDs. And that would usually, if it was DMX, it was usually hundreds of DMX universes. Projects average like 200 to 300. I think the most DMX universes we've done is roughly 800 DMX universes coming out of TouchDesigner. And if you're not, like, most of my textures stay kind of within the 256 by 256 default size. And if you're not doing big hefty rendering or, 4K textures, you can run hundreds and hundreds of DMX universes out of a DMX out chop off of a relatively beefy laptop, but it still runs, you can get upwards of 50 frames per second on a laptop, and most older DMX hardware kind of caps out at 40. So some of the newer stuff all works fine with 60, because 60 frames per second definitely looks better on addressable LEDs. So but basically, yeah, if you're using a laptop to work with DMX, and especially if you're sending it back through the lighting console to moving lights, a laptop is usually more than enough. And that was kind of the second thing that we figured out, was sending DMX back into the GrandMA 2 and having GrandMA merge it with the color information for moving lights, and you would do all the mapping still in TouchDesigner, so you'd need to know where the lights are in XYZ space. And then basically in doing all this, Matt was pretty, was with me from the ground up as far as building this user interface, and we spent a couple of weeks kind of prototyping it. Once I started trying to show it to other lighting programmers, they had a lot of trouble kind of comprehending what was going on, and so I had to build a user interface for them to kind of understand what was going on. And so this was kind of the prototype of the user interface. Let me see if I can find a frame. So this view was intended to show that there was 3 different generators inside of TouchDesigner. The top part is just showing the colors that were being applied to each generator. Each generator was generating, everything in the generator was grayscale, and then the colors were mapped to it using lookup top, basically. And I gave the programmer a whole bunch of channels to create these gradients. And basically, what the programmer saw was 6 RGB LEDs per gradient. And so that's what the six little bars are on the left side of each of the squares at the top. It's showing the RGB value of that gradient point, And then they would also, for each RGB fixture, they would have an additional channel that was the gradient point location, and they could move that. So they could move, for example, channel 4, they could move its gradient point wherever they wanted in that. So you could have them in order, like the third box shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you could move them all the way to the left to get a single gradient, like B is showing with just 4 in the middle, or you could kind of arbitrarily shift everything around. And as you moved the channel on the Grand MA, the little marker that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 would move to show you in real time what your gradient was that you were creating. And then there's a whole bunch of other channels for controlling the different generators below that the color would get mapped to, and it would kind of show you a square preview of what the content was, and then how it was getting mapped to the LEDs was kind of dependent on the stage. But this kind of was a universal like system basically. And this video I made to demonstrate, I tried to take it a step further by actually making a user interface in TouchDesigner that would allow you to control all these parameters and the gradients. You can see me moving the gradients around by just tapping them. But the caveat to this is that anything you did in here, because everything was being driven by Grand MA, anything you did in here had to be passed through the Grand MA and then going back to the other TouchDesigner. And that's what this diagram is showing, that the TouchDesigner computer would send NDI video to that Microsoft touchscreen surface, showing all those 6 kind of squares. The surface would, when you touched it, it would send DMX data to the GrandMA2 into what's called its programmer. And then the GrandMA2, because stuff was getting dumped into its programmer, would then send the DMX data back to the original TouchDesigner computer, and stuff would update in that computer and create and update the NDI, which would then go back to the tablet. So it was this round trip which allowed basically any user interface stuff happening in the tablet to then make its way back into the lighting console and back to the TouchDesigner system. And it was very precarious, because the way that a GrandMA2 programmer works, you have to be careful kind of like dumping data into it, because if the programmer is doing some regular programming in the Grand MA, and then your system suddenly takes over and dumps a bunch of data in the programmer, you might be messing up something that they're doing. So it never really got used that much, but it was a pretty good proof of concept. And I think you can see, if I move one of the attributes on the tablet, you can see it moving there, and then that is being sent DMX out back into the laptop over to the left, and the laptop is sending NDI over Wi-Fi. This is all happening over Wi-Fi. It's sending NDI back to that tablet to show all the different visualizations of the different generators. All right, looking at my notes. So yeah, this kind of system without the tablet, with just the regular control, was used a lot on a lot of different projects. We did do what was the LDI? So we did do a couple different projects. There was an early There was an early kind of volumetric display that we tried to do in at Amazon Web Services over top of a DJ. This was using actually a workshop that Marcus Heckman did in Toronto years ago. I used some of the techniques that he taught there. This was also well before RayTK, but it was very kind of like 2.5D-ish volumetric effects. It's kind of very a one-off effect, and this is the only effect that I kind of got really good documentation video of. TouchDesigner is getting, I guess I'm running like 8 different TouchDesigner projects right now, which might be why it's so grumpy. One of the other interesting projects that I worked on originally was RSA, an RSA conference where we had some, oh, there it is. Had some, we had these giant rings over top of the audience, and we had to figure out how to map them into either a regular kind of like video screen UV mapped into real space layout, or the programmer also wanted to be able to kind of like send particles around it. So I had to figure out how to make a particle engine, and this is kind of an early test I made of the particle engine. I had to make a particle engine that would be continuous around the circle, and it was all with chops. And basically, any pattern that was created using the regular controls that the lighting console programmer had would create particles that would, in TouchDesigner, it was just moving along a single line, but they would, any particles that got created would, if they went off one end of the raster in TouchDesigner, they'd come back in the other, so that if you're looking at the rings on the ceiling, you can't actually tell where there is a cut or an edge of the LED tape. So it was like a continuous, basically, particle engine. And I gave all these different kind of variables that they could mess with. These are all controllable in Granime with that same kind of user interface. This is an early version of that gradient kind of visual feedback that was before any of the ability to use it as a touchscreen or anything like that. And this is one thing I've noticed about pixel mapping in general is if you look at the actual patterns on a computer screen, they look kind of rudimentary, but once you get them onto actual LEDs, they actually look very beautiful, and especially since it's only 1 pixel thick, you can't tell that it's a bunch of bananas up on the ring on the ceiling. And this, I think these banana particles were actually used in the show at one point. I don't unfortunately have any good video of the show. It was, since it was an RSA conference, they discouraged people from videoing stuff. But I think there's streams of it somewhere that I could probably find if I was more fastidious. So yeah, the engine could either use that continuous particle engine, or it could use this kind of regular, everything is mapped throughout the whole stage. And I think I kind of show this is all running in a 3D visualizer that I made. And I think at the end of this video, yeah, so I was mapping, I had all the data in 3 dimensions and was able to make a visualizer to show the designer kind of what everything would look like. And that was running the whole time inside of there. All right. So the next project that I worked on was, and speaking of weird kind of weird mappings was a project for Disney D23. It was for the reveal of a movie called Raya the Last Dragon, and what they wanted was a one-off effect that would only happen for 30 seconds throughout the 4-hour presentation video, where they would show the reveal trailer on the 3 screens, and then at a certain part of the video, like this burst of light would fly out and fly all around the audience. So this is the Anaheim Convention Center. You can see all the chairs and the truss. And we basically hung a bunch of strings, of very low density strings of LEDs up in the ceiling, and tried to get them laid out in a way that I could then map spatially, and then have the Disney animators make a video to send to us that would correspond with the reveal trailer, and at a certain point in the reveal trailer, and this was all synced with SMPTE timecode, the burst of light would come out and fly around above the audience. And the hardest part of all this was trying to explain to the Disney animators how the raster would work. And so I made this demo video that kind of, the file on the back is the PNG that I sent them, showing them of where the LEDs would be located in the video file they needed to send me. And I needed to demonstrate that it was going to basically be folded so that the ceiling LEDs would be one way and the floor LEDs would actually be in the opposite direction. So if you wanted LEDs, if you wanted things to match on the floor and the ceiling, you actually had to mirror them across actually the upstage and downstage edge lines, because there was a few LEDs between the screens you can see there that needed to be included. So all those little white dots are LEDs that I had control of, and then everything else is stuff that the Disney animators had to control. And we went through so many revisions of kind of trying to get them to wrap their heads around this, that was something I don't think I could take video of because they wouldn't let you, but it was a 30-second effect that was pretty cool, but also it was a lot of work for 30 seconds of payoff. So some of the biggest shows that I've worked on are the Xbox press events at E3, and I think that's what the title slide video that Stefan was posting on the website for my name was showing, was the E3 2019 Xbox press event thing. The first one was 2018, and that was the year actually that Cyberpunk 2077 was announced, and it was a kind of hidden Easter egg trailer at the very end of the whole presentation, where the CEO or whoever it was says goodbye, and then as he's saying goodbye to everybody and ending the show, the whole stage gets hacked by Cyberpunk or something, and they do the trailer of the new game. And in this instance, I was controlling all the LED strips all around the stage, and we wanted to do, we were trying to figure out what to do for the hacking thing, and we realized that the coolest looking thing we could do was literally just get the video of the trailer that they were going to show and just map it to all the LEDs across the stage. And I think it'll open, or it might crash. There we go. So this is the stage, and you can see the CEO or whoever it is down there talking, and I don't have any audio, but this is the stage getting hacked. And and the moving lights were all programmed by the programmer, and all the LED walls were programmed by the video team, but the LED tape around the screen and between all the LED walls and all the single lines of LED were all being controlled by TouchDesigner, and it ended up being unusually effective to just have the video kind of blown up and played UV mapped across the whole stage, because the LED tape responds so differently to colors than the super expensive, highly calibrated LED wall. The gamma curve was so messed up that it looked like we created custom content for all the LED tape. Like there, you can see the sparkle looked like something different than the video, and then when it actually got to the video itself, it felt like it was super cued, because it was SMPTE synced. Anytime there was cuts in the video or big movement in the video, it was kind of also mirrored on the LED strips. So the LED strips, if you weren't really paying attention, felt like part of the environment, but also felt like something different. It felt like they were just kind of movements happening on their own and not just the video playing back, which is all it was. It was the easiest programming thing I've done with the best effect in TouchDesigner. It looks like we spent days and days kind of tightly queuing all this to the video, but it took 30 seconds to do. The hardest part, honestly, was getting Microsoft to give us this reveal trailer a week before they revealed it, because they really did not want this leaking at all. And you can't see it, but there's watermarks all over it, and which doesn't matter because it's a single line of LED strip. The watermarks don't really show up anywhere. And it's also very low res. Yeah, that was my favorite part. At the very end, all the LED strips turn blue, but there's no blue in the video as far as you can tell, because that's like 1% blue in the video, and the LEDs, since they have such a crappy gamma curve, shows up as like 50% blue, basically. So after that, we also did the 2019 E3 video, or E3 Xbox. That one we kind of refined the kind of full stage UV mapping idea even more, and added in a lot of the moving lights as well. And so this is a reveal trailer for Forza game, where they introduce a bunch of Lego cars and stuff to it. At the beginning, you can see over there on the right, they're revealing hidden behind a moving LED wall on the stage, there is a full-sized sports car built out of Legos. And then the trailer itself, we're using the same effect where we just map the video to the LEDs, but at this point we're also mapping it to all the moving lights. And you can see those kind of diagonal lights on the right, and the grid of lights around the screen, and then the grid on the left of horizontal lines. Those are all moving lights that are getting their data from TouchDesigner through the Grand MA, and the MA programmer has a channel that allows them to fade between either color information from TouchDesigner or color information from their own lighting console. And we managed to get it mostly synced between all the stage edge LEDs, and all those LEDs in that little area behind the car are also coming from TouchDesigner, and it's a mix of DMX controlled and video. So this is like 4 different elements being run by TouchDesigner: video, LED strips, DMX LED strips coming directly from TouchDesigner, and then DMX going through the lighting console and controlling the moving lights colors. And you can see it's more obvious kind of at the beginning, but the moving lights, the swirl is going across the moving lights and all the LED strips as if they're all kind of part of the same global LED screen, as it were. So also in that one, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the Keanu Reeves meme. I think I'm technically a part of that meme because that's the vertical LED strips behind him are my particle engine running in TouchDesigner. Yeah, now I can't grab that back.
Hi Pete, Wieland here. Just wanting to say that we have maybe 2 more minutes and then 5 minutes for questions. So
Okay.
if someone has a question.
Yeah, we can do questions. I think that was...
So if you have questions, I have a microphone here. And feel free, Stefan will take over the microphone, and if anyone has a question, feel free to ask.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for showing all the projects. Amazing stuff. I have just a question about which equipment would you recommend for a beginner to start just playing around with DMX and lighting? Do you have like some recommendation for, I don't know, starting with lights?
I would say the biggest, so there's basically addressable LEDs and then there's like DMX moving lights. I would say either, if you're gonna mess with either one, try and go for a LED, like a addressable LED controller that takes streaming ACN or ArtNet in directly. I've seen so many people on the TouchDesigner forums who go out and they buy a USB to DMX device, like the NTech USB to DMX, and there's like 2 or 3 of them, and one of them, the cheaper one, does not work with TouchDesigner, and even the more expensive one, it still only gives you one DMX universe. And even then you still need like moving lights or something to actually plug it into. So I would recommend going for like Advitech Pixlite or a DMX King device. They're generally cheaper. Even the addressable LED controllers have DMX outputs on them. Like they usually have 1 to 4 regular DMX outputs. So you could control a moving light with those if you wanted to. Basically, my biggest point of advice is avoid the USB ones. And also, if you want to learn how to send data through GrandMA to a moving light, the GrandMA on PC software will let you receive DMX into it for free. You can't send DMX out of on PC, so you can't send DMX to TouchDesigner, but you can have TouchDesigner send DMX into GrandMA, and you can control fake virtual moving lights, and it'll be very accurate to how you would experience it in real life. So it's a very good way to learn how to structure your DMX data out of TouchDesigner to control moving lights if you wanted to.
Any more questions for Pete? Yeah, then thank you very much, Pete. It was great to have you. I hope we see you soon when you travel Europe. And then we maybe have a workshop at the Node Institute. We're talking about it. So thank you very much for coming. I unfortunately have to cut this off and we all have to leave because otherwise at 11 the door outside will close, the big gate. And then we'll all have to stay here. I mean, we have lots of drinks. We could do it, but maybe you have other things to do tonight. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to all the presenters, and remember there's the TD event, and the TD event is a daytime thing. It's gonna cost entry, but in the evening we're gonna have the roundtable, and the roundtable is gonna be free for all, and we're gonna be at the Dome again, so that's one not to miss. So see you then. Thank you. And I forgot to mention supporter tickets. We've got supporter tickets, and this is the 3 heroes which got the supporter tickets. So big round of applause to them. Thank you guys. You're amazing.